as you said, you were finishing up writing it during the Voice campaign. It still seems incredibly relevant. And I have to say, I was ashamed at how little I knew reading this, and obviously how much information there is available.
But Ebony, I thought I knew this subject back to front. I'd read all the Henry Reynolds books. I'd read other books as well. I'm a huge admirer of Henry Reynolds. But when it came down to digging into particular lives and the particular track a family cut through the forests of the frontier, I discovered so much more that made sense of the decision to maintain this brutal regime. And the native police were not something that were idly maintained. They had to be funded. They had to be defended from their critics. They had to be defended from those who said they were too expensive. They had to be defended from the squatters who said they just make things worse. This was a squad of state-sanctioned killers that required political and economic organization to maintain. And so for me, there were these just discoveries after discoveries along this way. But the response has been quite divided. There are, the book is very beautifully commended by Marci Langton on its cover, and other Aboriginal Indigenous leaders have been absolutely terrific about the book. There are those, however, who would actually prefer that this history not be brought, that we not chew over this history, and let's forget it and move on. And in that respect, the Indigenous and non-Indigenous response to the book has been very similar amongst some. And there are those who are deeply troubled by the fact that these killings were essentially carried out by Indigenous people. And I have done all I could to explain that this is an imperial, as I said earlier, that this is an imperial device that goes back in history to before Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain, that these were terrible times for young men when they were offered a spot in the native police. But they were principally recruits. We do know that there were people dragooned into, kidnapped into the native police, and in Queensland, Indigenous prisoners in jails could serve out their time in the ranks of the native police. But the native police are as troubling for the Indigenous as they are for the whites. And this book is, I suppose, inevitably about ventilating those troubles and bringing sunlight to them. And that involves a lot of pain.